Welcome to a true spiritual adventure story like the world has never known. Volume 1, Living the Enlightened Life, with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon. Good morning. This is Dr. Jim Weldon, Yogadhi, speaking to you from Heavenly Mountain, beautiful community in Boon, North Carolina. Today we're going to be doing the official launch of Volume 1, Living the Enlightened Life, here from our center. I'm actually in my traveling retreat center. It's a fifth wheel, which we travel from time to time around the United States, share the story of and the secret journeys and all the wonderful things that I passed through over my life. This first book is being officially launched on the full moon here. It's a special holiday called Guru Purnama, the day of the teacher, in which we honor and thank those individuals which have helped bring us into living a higher, more enlightened life. Many of the things that I've passed through are unique, very interesting, and important to know a little bit more about. This first work, Living the Enlightened Life, Volume 1, it's a true spiritual adventure story, and it really represents the first half of my life. About 42 years seeking from my childhood, everything that I passed through, and all the adventures that I passed through, the wonderful teachers that I came into contact with in seeking answers to the deepest questions of life, and all of the amazing adventures. And individuals who have been reading this from time to time in its earlier ideations have continued to tell me that, gee, Yogadhi, nobody has ever really written anything like this before. Finding and supporting some of the greatest spiritual teachers in the world, and particularly the global humanitarian that founded the Art of Living Foundation, Sri Ravi Shankar. Those of you that do not know, this is now the world's largest all-volunteer NGO in 156 countries, and is now benefiting literally hundreds of millions of people around the world. I first met him long before the founding of the Art of Living, and this first book really shares that first meeting. And I can tell you that when I first met him and came into contact with him in 1976, he was just turned 21. I was 26, and we were both on an amazing program in Switzerland, learning advanced knowledge with an earlier teacher. What happened in that meeting, what happened to me at that time, really took me the next 30-something years to really begin to comprehend what that was. He was already a very, very advanced, enlightened soul at that time, even at that early age. And many years passed after that first contact. This organization began to take off globally. And when I took the first copy of this work to him and gave it to him, I came into my first advanced program or advanced course that was being held in Pittsburgh. I was holding in my hand about 350 pages of my life story, trying to explain what this was that I came into contact so long ago when I met him in 1976, and all the wonderful things that happened with the various teachers that I had met in the first half of my life. And he came into that first advanced course and said something to me for the book. Believe it or not, I hadn't given it to him yet. I hadn't showed it to him yet. I had just taken the happiness course for the first time, was going to my first advanced program, and he literally walked into that lecture hall in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the early 90s. And first thing he said actually ended up being a summary of what I was doing and a preface and a prediction about what would happen with this work someday down the road. And I want to read that to you because it's very surprising. So imagine I'm sitting in that hall for the first time. It's the middle of winter. It's very cold outside. I had just met him in Colorado for the first time since the early 70s. A number of years had passed. Now it was 1992. I met him in 1976. Actually, in 1976, he revealed himself to me and his cosmic stature. You need to listen to that, to hear that, to read that segment, to get an idea of what I was going through personally at that time. I was so absolutely amazed by what had happened. I had written a summary of all of that, and I was holding it in my hands. It was about 350 pages. I was sitting in the small hall with maybe 7,500 people at that time. And he walked right in to that first event, and this is what he said. When is a novel interesting? When do you call it a novel? When it's full of thrills and climaxes? Isn't this so? It's interesting when there's a big drama, right? Then we find it more interesting. Each one of us is a novel. And it's just like walking into a library, looking at a shelf of books. There are thousands of such novels. In each, there's a character. In each, there's a story woven around that character. It goes on and on. In the same way, in this universe, it is all living knowledge. Millions have come, millions have gone unnoticed, and some 2 or 3 novels which are prominent stand out for thousands of years. So look at your life as a novel without hiding anything. Look at all the ups and the downs, the climaxes and the anticlimaxes. Look at everything in it. It's so interesting, isn't it? That's it. The story of life. So that first meeting in 1976, he gave me a vision of, as far as I know, the highest level of life, the highest plane of reality. And I was only 26 in 76. The story that's at the core of this first work. And I was looking for answers. We all had a little Kundalini, we all had a little energy, and we were studying with a teacher that he had been with at that time, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. I was a teacher for that. And I was literally taken out of the physical body and taken to a level of life, which I was told in that experience was the finest level of creation, and given a spiritual gift, something called a boon. And I was told actually by him in that space, I didn't know it was him at that time. I just knew it was this unbelievable being on this very high level of life, the ability to see and perceive deeper and see the truth of life. It was a spiritual gift, he said at that time, called the finest level of creation. And I know this sounds amazing. I know it sounds incredible. It was more incredible for me because when I came out of that experience back in my body, I came out of a deep sleep into that high plane, had that experience. I woke up and I realized now that I was, quote, awake in my body, I was actually asleep. That high state of consciousness is not really attained. It exists in this high level of life, these very, very high planes of reality, and we rise in consciousness and touch that. And those that are able to maintain that intensity of experience, they call enlightened beings. And it's my personal opinion, and many people have said this, and I've been told by the founder that we are in the greatest period of spiritual awakening in our recorded history right now, in the next 4 or 5 years, huge period. And so after I came out of that experience, I was so perplexed. I was so amazed. I was so flabbergasted of what it was, and literally spent from 1976 to 1992, trying to reattain and come back to that level of intensity of experience. Totally a true story. Experienced it a little bit, but not fully. And when we reconnected on this advanced course, where I was holding the copy of the book, where he gave me this summary of my book, and personally, I believe we'll see that this work will be around for a long, long time, and people will be writing, because nobody has ever done anything like this. Told the entire everything without hiding anything, as he says in here. All the ups, all the downs, all the climaxes, all the anti-climaxes, nothing held back. And so I promised myself that I would do that, to try to make sure that everything was as accurate as it possibly could be. It appears now, of course, that this organization is the greatest spiritual organization now in the world. He's the greatest humanitarian, as far as I know, on the world. I mean, literally hundreds of millions of people literally are involved. So many NGOs, so many good things are being done. I won't list those. I could go on for hours and hours talking about that. But when we reconnected many years later in the early 90s, in that first meeting, I was sitting in a small group with him. He actually took me back to that place, right in that meeting, out of the body, into that subtle level of life. He turned and he said, "Yogadhi." So now is it becoming clear? Such an amazing adventure. So on this very, very special holiday, a full moon day, out of gratitude to the tremendous lineage of teachers, and there are many, many who have attained that, fortunately, and there's going to be many, many more now in this time, not only just in India, but all around the world. I wanted to help provide a bridge in understanding. You know, in the West, we don't have the benefit of the historical records. We have in our culture, mostly as a Christian culture, the story, a little bit of the backstory of Jesus. And guess what? There's a book in the works for that. Not out yet, but that's actually the third volume. And so I wanted to share that on this day, launch it on this special day. You know what's cool about this? You can buy a book, but will you really read it? So what I've done is I've not only published this, which is available on Amazon, on my YouTube page, all the individual chapters are there, and me sharing, because if you buy 20 books, how many of them do you actually finish? We're more used to having things now on video. Out of tremendous gratitude for the gift of grace that I've received and the insight that has come into my life, I'm so happy to announce this to tens of thousands of friends around the world about the amazing times that we are in now. And the story continues. So on this special day, take some time and look at your life. Look at all the ups, look at all the downs, look at all the conflicts, look at all the difficulties as the necessary steps that we need to go through in living an enlightened life. You know, we come into this world and life is so short, like this, babies like this, doing this specific mudra, holding on. And after everything is done, what? Our hands are open and we leave with nothing. So what do we carry with us? The attainment and the love that we've lived, the merit from the good works that we've done, the inspiration that we've shared with individuals, we've helped individuals, and the benefit of that lasts. The state of consciousness is ultimately one of the most important things that's happening in life. And that state of consciousness, the state of consciousness that you come into contact during meditation, the transcendental state of consciousness. Maybe some of you, like me, have slipped into this next state called the turiya, between waking and dreaming and sleeping. That can be a space where you get insights and inspiration. This story that I share here, this adventure story that I share here, talks about as a young child of 4 or 5 years old, I was already having flashbacks to an earlier time. And I was always already having some flash forwards to later things that would happen in my life. Surprising, but absolutely this was true. And how I dealt with that. So our life is big, and we are on a journey to be connected to that big life in the same way that we are connected now on the internet. There is a level of oneness and unity. So meditation, 47 years since I first was instructed into meditation. I'm so grateful for that. That was one of the greatest things that I ever learned in my life. So meditation is another state of consciousness, that restful alertness. We could call that transcendental consciousness. There's a state beyond that that ultimately gets established. This is what I'm talking about, what those are and how those come, and all the potential experiences. The cosmic awareness, the cosmic consciousness, where awareness is maintained all the time. There's a couple more above that. God consciousness and unity. I won't talk much about that. All of that is shared through my works. But most importantly, we need to understand that this is the next natural state of human evolution. And now what's happened is all of these great teachers have come out and traveled around the world now. It's been going on. And the whole world consciousness has been raised. Maturity has come in the world, although it always doesn't appear so, especially if you're watching the news on a day-to-day basis. But the world consciousness is rising, and those advanced states, which were very difficult, almost impossible to experience and attain in the past times, are now going to be made available for tens and tens and tens of thousands of individuals. I'm telling you, this is happening. We're already seeing those. So to all my great friends around the world, whatever tradition that you have, you can understand that all of these great teachers are talking about this same state. All of these teachers are talking about the same state and how that gradually can be attained over time. All of the episodes are available there. It's just there to make this bridging understanding, this knowledge available to inspire people, especially in the West, because we don't have the benefit of this huge 10,000 years of history. So thank you very much. I'm grateful for your friendship on this wonderful, bright, full moon day. My prayer and hope for every single human being is that they would live the highest state of love, compassion, and oneness possible, and bring something into this world. Think of your life, what's important. It doesn't need to be flashy. Even a simple work, like Mother Teresa, just loving and caring for a few individuals, doing that over and over again, can create a huge force of good. So namaste on this wonderful full moon day. Thanks for joining us in our YouTube channel, books, podcast episodes on living the enlightened life, and autobiography with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon.